cheer for your Sydney Swans. Cheer, cheer the red and the white, honour the name by day and by night.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club.
So to all you loyal Swans out there, you just can't get enough of the red and the white.
Fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods. You're joined, as always, by the crew from Sydney. My name's Noddy, and I'm joined tonight by the one and only Jules. Great to have you back on the potty again.
G'day, Noddy. I'm very pleased to be back for a chat. Even if it is after our third loss of the year, it's still nice to be back with you.
I hear you, Jules. We certainly have a fair bit to get through as we unpack the frustratingly close loss against the Saints. But just before then, if you like what you hear, please remember to give us a like and a follow. Okay, you lovely loyal Swans fans, let's kick things off with a quick game recap. Last Sunday, in front of just over 30,000 fans at Marvel, our Sydney Swans were defeated by the St Kilda Saints by 2 points with a final score of 13-6-84 to 11-16-82. Okay, first impressions, Jules, what do you think of that?
Well, to state the obvious, losing sucks. And we haven't done a lot of it so far this year,
it's been
thankfully.
a good year. Yeah.
But I tell you what, missing out on the chocolates for a second game in a row by a single kick, it kind of sucks. And this one seemed to hurt a little bit more than last week because I felt like we were in the box seat, 30 points up midway through the third quarter. And then the Saints just got on a roll, kicked 8 of the last 10 goals, and we were left ruining so many missed opportunities.
Yeah, oh my God, it's aren't the vultures circling. I will just say before I respond to some of those comments that Chris and I did an event at the Alex. Obviously, it was Pride Round, and fortunately and unfortunately, the Swans and the Saints are the team that put up their hand to represent Pride Round. Unfortunately, that it's only 2 teams as opposed to a whole round of every team. But anyway, we did an awesome event there with the Rainbow Swans, who are the official LGBTIQA+ group for the Swans, collaborating with Club closely there. We did a raffle to raise money for a group called 2010, which are a non-profit based in Sydney that provide young people with housing, counselling and social support across New South Wales, people in that community I just mentioned. And we raised $600 with a bunch of merch. Yeah, it was really, really cool evening event. And obviously the only thing that sucked, the biggest downer, was the loss.
Yeah,
but it was
you might have raised a bit more had we got the win, but maybe next time.
Yeah, definitely. But just going back to your points there, I guess when you're so used to winning, you have a loss, and it's been Richmond, and then a lot of wins in between, and then a very good game plan from Freo that knocked us off at home. But then to lose a second one in a row, that's sort of sitting a little bit uncomfortably, I think. But it's obviously not panic stations yet. I know there was a bit going around different circles in the media, people talking about teams that were on. Breaking news, Jules, over to you.
Okay, Noddy, news just in. David Zeta has just tweeted regarding the tribunal case and the outcome for Isaac Heaney. It really pains me to say this out loud, but Isaac Heaney's suspension has been upheld. He will miss this week's game against North Melbourne and is ineligible for the 2024 Brownlow medal. Ouch.
You are joking. That's just happened, is it?
That has just happened. Yeah, the tribunal was deliberating for about 90 minutes, and it seems that, the Swans did not mount enough of a case to overturn. So there we go.
I mean, pardon my French, but this is bullshit. I cannot believe this. I mean, obviously this was going to be a talking point in the episode tonight, but given that it's just broken and you've updated us, we may as well just get into it now. I mean, Oh man, I'm fuming. I cannot believe that. Like we did mention before we started recording, I looked at some of those blog updates thinking it was a little bit light on for referring other incidents or similar incidents. I think it said they spoke about Charlie Cameron, and he's a good bloke, a good record, so is Heaney, so therefore. But I was thinking it was a bit light on similar incidents, like
precedents.
Precedents, yeah.
And that usually seems to be something that comes up a lot in these tribunal hearings. We just spoke about it off air, but the Zerk Thatcher incident on Aaron Norton on the weekend, seemed similar, although it was the only difference was it was the defender on the forward jostling for position, not the other way around, but essentially accidentally caught him with a swinging arm, and Norton was out of the game with concussion and likely a broken nose, yet it wasn't cited. So it's the inconsistency, I think, that's quite confusing here, but also why was that not brought up in the case, unless we just missed it? But
maybe it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it's because it seems very clear the most recent, relevant, fairly similar incident. But then, I mean, there's Hogan with that face punch, Butters
strike.
with a punch. They did same thing, cited, week off, and then went to the tribunal and they got a reprieve. But of course, best season, one of the best starts to a season like ever. He's on track to, he'd obviously go deep. I mean, he's predicted to be one of the players that is around the mark for the Brownlow. I think they were saying they predicted the Brownlow predictor after round 17 predicted Lachie Neale to win last year. So, and that was the case for Isaac. So, I mean, this is just I kind of want to say. It's unbelievable. Like that incident you raised about Norton and Zerk Thatcher. You look at the vision of that and you're thinking, okay, are we trying to spot Loch Ness Monster here? Is this book Bigfoot in the woods? It's so fuzzy, grainy, you can't see shit. And yet when the second there's a Swans player come into doubt, a player like Heaney who's on track, it's the clearest close-up you've ever seen. And you're thinking, if they had this technology, why hasn't every incident been looked at it like this?
No, 100% agree. And it just so happens that, of course, Heaney's a victim to a rule change that only just came in as well. So in the, 150 plus years of the AFL and players, winning medals and those sorts of things, and he's going to be the first player that kind of falls foul to a recent change. So, if not incredibly unfair, then incredibly unlucky.
So it comes down to this intention thing, right?
Yes. It's the striking of the opponent off the ball, basically.
Is always intentional.
Well, usually was the key word used. Usually be graded as intentional rather than careless. The word usually presented the grey, which is what the Swans, I understand, went after. And they contested that he was jostling in the contest. He wasn't looking at Webster. So how was he to know, exactly where he was? Webster was off balance, so his head was lower to the ground than Heaney would have expected. Yeah. And the medical report was favourable. Webster played out the rest of the game. So, that's likely, the argument that they made. And I'm, to be honest with you, stunned that it didn't hold up.
I'm absolutely lost for words here because we found some wording on the internet. It was from, I think, Sydney AFL, but you think that they take it from the head document from the league itself. There's a definition here of intentional conduct. It's absolutely bonkers. It's like a player intentionally commits a classifiable offence if the player engages in the conduct constituting the reportable offence with the intention of committing that offence. An intention is a state of mind. Intention may be formed on the spur of the moment. The issue is whether it existed at the time at which the player engaged in the conduct. It just goes on and on. I think Steve-O said definitions of war crimes and crimes against humanity are easier to follow.
Well, he's not far off. He's not. And, sorry to everyone that we're labouring on this, but this is huge news. I mean, obviously not just for the North Melbourne clash, but for Heaney himself. He's had the most amazing season and just deserves every accolade that may or may not be coming his way. And to have it taken out under these circumstances just seems cruel.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think I could put it better than that, Jules. It's going to be a little bit hard to plough through the rest of the episode now. To be
I know,
honest.
right? Losing sucks even more now that I know this information.
Oh man, I mean,
yeah.
it's just unfathomable. It goes all these new rule changes and all these interpretations. It's just so it goes against common sense. And, you know, people are talking about, I mean, Robbo's a big proponent of this. It's like, don't keep changing the game. But then the second this happened, he was like, yeah, you're out, Heaney, you're out. You know, and I don't know. I don't want to say that he's the only hypocrite out there. And of course we have our Swans, you know, we're looking at this through red and white lens. But I think we're fairly... I want to say I'm quite biased. I know, but you're quite. I think you approach things with a level head, and that's sort of evident in.
I mean, look, I think the crucial comment that came out today from Patrick Cripps was, I think I don't know if it was specifically about the Heaney incident, but it was, you know, around that sort of 1 week kind of suspension, and he said these sorts of acts shouldn't make one ineligible. For something like a Brownlow medal, people shouldn't be missing the medal for things like this. The game's evolved, and so the criteria around the medal eligibility should as well. And so I guess that's the second argument that kind of naturally comes up now that we know that he is deemed ineligible. It then comes down to that question mark around the asterisks and whether or not that needs to be changed.
Just a question without notice. If you can change the rules and interpretations of the rules
mid-season,
then can't you change the eligibility criteria mid-season?
Yeah, well,
it's a step too far. How dare you propose
some rules for some rules for others, I think is yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned Cripper there because he was a benefit. He benefited from you getting off.
Well,
right?
and
then
truly.
Went on to win the Brownlow that year. So
yeah, the Carlton team's lawyer has got a pretty strong track record at these things. So perhaps we need to improve our legal advice. I don't know.
It's hard to not put on the conspiracy hat here and just say if this were Nick Dacos, there is no way that would have been upheld.
No. Well, I mean,
if anything, they're clearing Heaney out of the way for the protected species.
I know. Just making it a sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Bontempelli.
Or the Bont, yeah. And look, I mean, you know, it's obviously a very different incident, but we saw Patrick Dangerfield basically argue his way out of a 1 week suspension not that long ago as well. So, yeah, it does. It feels a little poor, but anyway, I guess we need to find our way forward.
Back
from
to
here.
the review of the game.
Something like that.
That just crushed our hearts. Okay. All right. Well, let's get back to it then. So you were saying second loss in a row by a single kick. It's not panic stations yet. But if we think about the game, we didn't lose a first quarter.
We didn't.
That's a positive.
We broke even.
We broke even. It's a step
We'll take
forward.
it. Yeah.
And then we did what we love to do, which is just smash teams away in the space of 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
5 goals could have been more. And then in the third, we just couldn't, third and fourth, just couldn't kick a goal, basically. When we had the opportunity to bury them, we kicked like 4 or 5 behinds. They came back, and then it was game on. And that's glossing over the fact that we looked off from the beginning. How do you think we looked? It seemed slippery or something there in the beginning of the game.
Yeah, they were very rushed and fumbly. So yeah, it's sort of hard to know the conditions, but it felt like we were doing that more than the Saints were. So I have to just feel that the pressure kind of got to us a little bit. You know, there's been a lot of talk about it, you know, from you guys over the last few weeks, but we've seemed to have deviated from our DNA a little bit. And these last 2 losses have become evidence of that. But this has been happening for a number of weeks. You know, we were a team that has always been defence first, and then we've had the capability and the talent to capitalise offensively once we apply that pressure to the opposition. And we've kind of come up against sides, I suppose, that have put us to the sword by doing exactly that. And we haven't stood up. And we've been pretty flat in a lot of the key areas that we would usually pride ourselves in, like disposal efficiency, accuracy, and defensive pressure. And those are the three elements that have just let us down. And I think the Saints brought all of that and then some. And, it was too much. So we've got to find a way back, really, from this. And I suppose, in some ways, a lot of this is in our control. And I think John Longmire referred to that in his post-match press conference. We understand the things that we need to do and the fundamentals, and we just need to start doing them again. For whatever reason, they've just fallen by the wayside a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Jules. I think, some of those points you touched on there, we saw pretty clearly in a few stat lines. I mean, I think you mentioned tackles. What was the number for the game? It was pretty low, wasn't it?
We only had 41 for the game.
Jesus.
Now,
I'm sure Rowie does that on his own, doesn't he?
He nearly did. He needed help, let me tell you. Yeah. So we had 41 for the game. Now, for reference, our season average is 60.5.
Wow.
So we were well down. And then you compare that to what the Saints dished out, and they had 63 for the game. So there's a huge glaring differential in that department. The tackles inside forward 50 were even worse. So we only had 4. Our season average is 10.6, and they had 11.
Wow.
So if you really want to look at where we let ourselves down, I think defensive efforts are a pretty good place to start.
Yeah, and it just, you could really, you saw that, didn't you, throughout the game? I mean, especially in that fourth quarter, handballs weren't going to any of our targets. I think they would just always seem to be a Saints player on us. And that perceived pressure and that, obviously pressure factor rating, it just had the Saints all over us. And that was probably a big part, certainly of that first quarter effort from them, but then getting back into the game in the second half. But yeah, it's just really sort of disappointing because, for the first half of the season, that's kind of what we've based our game around, is that effort and connection. Yeah. And it just seemed like, players weren't willing to do the work that we know that they can do. They were a bit standoffish. They were sort of maybe waiting to receive the ball so that they could then get the, whatever stat they were looking to get. But I don't know, it just didn't seem very Swans-like of 2024.
No, they weren't willing to do the hard work is kind of what it felt like, the dirty work, so to speak, except for Rowie, really. They were all a bit off in that department. And look, we can call out the mids a bit. It wasn't all on them, but they were all down on their season averages. Even Rowie was a couple of tackles off his season average. Heaney only had 4, Errol had 3, Warner had 2. It's just not the sort of numbers that the Saints mids, were putting out, and it just showed, as you mentioned, just in terms of the overall pressure felt and effort, which I hate to say, because it's one thing that I always, I never like to doubt in us. So there you go.
Yeah. I feel like it was off even past the Freo, like even more so than the Freo game. I feel like we still had a bit of effort and maybe a little bit better connection. I mean, Freo just had a good game plan, but the Saints, I think, just rattled us through that pressure and we didn't bounce back. But, I mean, the other thing, obviously, which is not so much effort, it's probably mindset, but accuracy, or rather inaccuracy. Like, come on.
God. So let's look at the missed opportunities. We had 13 more inside 50s and 8 more shots on goal. So
that's just...
Explain that scoreline.
Is that us? So did we lose the game or did the Saints win the game? I mean, I know there's always a bit of grey in that sort of approach, but...
Well, on paper, we should have won the game.
Well, that's it. I mean, that first half of that third...
Yeah.
Second half. Well, first half as well. I mean, there were so many behinds through that third quarter.
Yeah, the second half was particularly glaring. We kicked 3 goals to 11 behinds in the second half. God. So, yeah. That's
brutal. I mean, you can't expect to win. I don't really care where a team is coming, right? They're still AFL level. They're going to throw everything they can at the number one team. And I think there was an element of that in this game against the Saints. But I mean, you look at their team themselves. I was thinking, and that's actually happened. We went to the Freo game. You know, we sat next to one another, and I thought that we could have had a potential opportunity in their backline, thinking that they were so young. And then, as it turned out, Draper and all these young key defenders were some of their best players on the day, and they were so impactful. And then I skip forward a week, and I was thinking, you know, with all their tools out in the forward line, I think we could probably, you know, really, we should be able to lock them up and then, then flick out again. But, you know, obviously Higgins kicked 3, but, Sharman was pretty good. Some of their young mids came through. Obviously Max King out was good news, but it obviously didn't
good news, but in a roundabout kind of way. The way that I sort of thought about that was similar to when we had Lance in our team, and then he would miss. And then everyone would say, well, Sydney's a better side when Lance isn't playing. Well, no, that wasn't the case. But what it does do is it creates unpredictability. So the Saints players go to Max King 25% of the time as a target up forward. So when you take that out, they were a lot more unpredictable. And we were caught with the tail between our legs a few times. Some particular kind of call-outs was Marshall creeping forward, who often either had no direct opponent or a big mismatch. And I think we both called out some vision of Errol with his hands up in the air looking extremely distressed about why he was the one to go to Marshall. And so that threw us. And, the Ross Lyon, Longmire coaching battle, both from the Paul Roos School of Coaching, it was always going to be tight. And there were just a few things I think that just seemed to, for whatever reason on the day, fell their way.
I mean, talk about the rub of the green and the bounce of the ball, that Darcy Wilson goal. I mean, that went almost at right angles, right? And then, of course, Juzzy doesn't kick it long enough, and Dougal Howard gets a hand on it and then gets up close and personal with the Swans cheer squad. They were lucky they were playing us and not Collingwood, can I just say? That's it. I think, and I was saying, I think that could have been an unofficial first club interview because, obviously we're in the market for a key tall, and I was thinking, he's from New South Wales, he's from Wagga Wagga, he's uncontracted at the end of the year. He has sort of been up and down in terms of form, but the game that he dished out is the type of game I think that Swans list managers would, lick their lips at, hard at it, heaps of effort, running back, tackling, this and that. You never know. That little connection there with the crowd could have been an unofficial first club interview, a clandestine club interview.
Clandestine, love it.
In season.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously he wasn't the only one. I think Liam Henry was pretty good for them. Mateus Philippou, he was good. Who else? I mean, I already said Higgins kicked 3. I don't know. It was just
Steele was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you called it just before, but that Dougal Howard moment, that was a big momentum swinger in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a monumental rundown chase and dive to touch McInerney's goal. And, as we knew then, we certainly did after, goals being at an absolute premium, that effort just inspired both the fans and the rest of his team. And it kind of felt like from that moment on, the momentum had just completely gone their way and they threw everything at us and it worked.
Yeah, it certainly was a team lift, wasn't it? And then,
big time.
There was a few other little moments and then they kicked those 4 in a row and that, I don't know. I mean, there was a couple of little calls that you see. I mean, Ollie getting tripped at the end there with about 5 or 6 minutes to go. Didn't see it, but then Mason Wood gets fined and you're thinking, okay, we're probably better to steer clear of the MRO.
I think tonight there's too much anger tonight. I think we're
going to regress very quickly.
Yeah.
Speaking of inspiration, though, with 90 seconds to go, Logan Marks just inside the 50, and he goes back very confidently and says, "I've got this." And I was thinking, man, this guy's got it. He's got it.
So did I. The moment that it landed in his hands, I just thought, how many times has this kid replayed what happened to him last week in his head? And he would be thinking, I just can't wait to get a chance at redemption.
Yeah.
And it came so much quicker than either he or we ever could have expected.
Yeah.
And as you said, he just looked so poised, confident. He looked like he wanted the responsibility, and kudos to him.
Yeah,
He was willing to shoulder it, which is no mean feat, given his recent memory. And it just, went for it to drift like that. It was just, oh, God. Yeah, I really felt for him.
I'll give you an insight to my level of crazy, especially after the number of beers I've had at a game. When he missed the goal against Freo, because he was still unsigned at that point, right? Hadn't extended.
Yeah.
I was like, he's deliberately missed that. This is a.
I know.
This is
I
a
was
point
there.
Yeah, you were there. You're like, Noddy, shut up.
I was like, no,
this
is conspiracy gone way too far. The poor guy.
Bonkers.
I mean, to be fair, that kick was quite a bit harder actually than the one that he had on the weekend. But,
that's right. He could still play on on.
Yeah.
But like, so obviously this is us. We're not saying, we lost because he missed. There were so many other opportunities.
Well,
to win the
Papley
game.
missed a much easier goal, with 4 minutes to go. And Hayward
set shot, sprays
so,
it.
Papley's a senior player with a lot more experience and those sorts of things. He didn't capitalise on his moment either. So I'm certainly not in the camp of let's shoot down Logan McDonald.
There was a lot of that going on in the immediate aftermath, and then I think obviously the key talking point was the Heaney thing, obviously. But yeah, look, I'm obviously you don't want there to be a trend of these sorts of things, but at some point, the tide will change, and he will be the guy that we go to and just go, he's got this. He's
without a doubt, with the trajectory that he's going on, he absolutely shanked it week 1, just missed it week 2. Footy gods, give him a third go at it, and he'll absolutely ice it. I promise.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, so we've spoken a little bit about them, and we've spoken a little bit about us. I guess we should probably get onto the Bob Medal. So here we are. So the Bob Medal obviously is our version of the Bob Skilton, and we list up our 3-2-1 best on ground for the game. And in 3 points, we've got Chad, 2 points, Isaac Heaney, 1 point, Ollie Florent. All right, let's just have a bit of a rolling chat about all three of these guys. Off the top, Jules?
Yeah, sure. So the Chad, I mean, he was. I think he was well and truly our best. He had just the 23 disposals, which is a little bit down, but he was operating at 87% efficiency, which I can tell you on the day was extremely high. So he was one of the few that were actually, his turnover game was pretty low. So he was pretty dependable. Operated as usual, million miles an hour out of the stoppage, 7 contested possessions, 9 score involvements. He had kicked 2 amazing goals of his own, 5 clearances, couple of tackles. We called that out. Could be higher, but effort, I guess, somewhat. With around about that 400 meters gained. So he was huge, and he was a big part of our late second quarter surge. And, whenever he gets the ball, you just know there's electricity just running everywhere. Takes the game on, as always. And I think well and truly our best on the day.
Yeah, and I think it's reflected in the coaches' votes. But I know much has already been said about where he sits in his career compared to where Dusty was at the same time, and they're eerily similar stats, and there was a few little differences here and there, but just the impact that they both have, he really can turn a game just in an instant, and him kick that one of those goals he kicked from the centre square, basically a couple of steps out of the centre circle, and it was just so Chad, but obviously had a little bit of help at the bouts there. I think Marty did some good shielding, blocking, but yeah. I mean, he really is the last piece to the puzzle in terms of key signings. Obviously, his contract isn't this year; it's finishing up next year. But Yeah, I don't know. Question without notice. How do you think he's poised? Do you think he'll extend or?
Oh, look, I swing. I swear like a pendulum on this one. I mean, the kind of money that they're talking about that he's worth, like they're sort of saying between that 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 million dollars a season. You know, like huge money just given his age and his obvious potential. I mean, you'd think that given they seemingly all have a pact to stick together, that you know he knows that he's a real critical part of that, and surely he wants premierships. So I'm really hopeful that he'll stay. But there's no doubt that if he was to stay, probably similar to the rest of the guys, you know, he'll give up a little bit more money in the short term, I'd say.
There's obviously different kinds of pacts, but do you think this one was a blood pact? Sorry, I had to get it.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I actually did too.
Yeah. That's had to have been.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. All right, we'll obviously watch that one with great interest as the season plays out in the off season. But before then, obviously, we've already spoken about the Heat, who was under fire in the courtroom tonight. I mean, you can make a movie out of it, but he was fantastic in the game. You know, he's such a gentleman. He checked on how Webster
straight away.
Straight away. I didn't mean that you weren't supposed to be there. I was
no malice involved whatsoever.
No
just a good guy, just a bloody good guy who deserved to. Anyway, he was awesome. 24 disposals, 67% efficiency, 11 contested possessions. He is a bull. 10 score involvements, 2 goals of his own. 2 clearances, 4 tackles, bunch of meters gain, you know, near on sort of 450 meters gain. So yeah, another very, very solid performance from the Heat. Yeah.
And look, if we had kicked all those goals and put them to the sword, he might have even been up for a Brownlow vote that game, you know.
Well, his 2 late goals in the third quarter when the Saints were right on their big momentum swing, he actually kept us in it. He was the reason why we were close.
Definitely.
So well done.
Yep, nice work there, Heat. Heens, we're all feeling for you, mate. But let's get on to Ollie, because he really deserves a good chat, because he over the last probably month or so, maybe since his extension, but look, he really just looks more and more confident. Like he's pushing off guys, he's fending more. He really is giving that drive. Like it's not just Blakey. You know, obviously, you know they work in tandem, but I mean he's looking great, right?
Oh, he's just so confident. He's found his niche in the team, and I think you're right. Like, you know, he's just growing with confidence week on week, and he understands that he's got proper wheels as well. So he's kind of willing to, you know, show them off occasionally, have a bounce or two, and do a bit of a Blakey, you know, down the field. So 24 disposals for him, 75% efficiency. He makes really good decisions. You know, he's very, very thoughtful in the way he goes about things. 7 contested possessions, 5 score involvements. He kicked a goal. He kicked a great goal, actually.
Yeah, that was a mad goal.
I mean, I don't know how far that was out, but I want to say like 55 metres out on the run or something. It was nuts. And yeah, 500 metres gained. A big part of our run off half back, you know, alongside the Lizards. So great year for him.
Yeah, definitely. And look, obviously, you know, Logan for a couple of weeks in a row has been a talking point, as we've already touched on. But Ollie, for his growing responsibility within the team, I think he's going to have some moments that he's learnt from as well, because in both of those games, Freo and Saints, he also kicked behind in the last, you know, five minutes or so that could have helped ice. But they were much harder kicks. They were on the run. They were around the corner. But, yeah, I think he himself will look back at that. But, I mean, again, he's not the reason we lost. It was a team effort for inaccuracy. But yeah, like other than that, like I think he's we've already talked about the trip, right? The Mason Wood thing. That really set me off.
The missed trip.
The missed trip. Yeah. The holding the ball. As it were. We'll miss the trip.
Imagine getting pinged for holding the ball after you've just been purposely tripped. I mean, how he didn't get like 50 metres for descent is beyond me. Anyway.
Oh my God. There was another moment, I can't remember what it was, but it was out of a centre bounce, and Marshall tackle Rowie from behind, and obviously Rowie threw his arms up to sort of milk the holding call, but then Marshall fully tackled him around his ankles, like it was a ripper rugby tackle, and then the umpire's standing right in front of him, and he's like, "Nah, play on, nothing to see here." It bobbles out, and then Higgins kicks a goal, and it was like their fourth in a row in that run. Yeah. It's just like a couple of little moments you're thinking,
fortune favours the brave.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like they took it on. So, these things, when it falls your way, unfortunately, it seems other things do as well, including umpiring decisions. So.
I mean, it's funny because we had 19 free kicks to their 11.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking,
that.
I'll give you 5 or 6 back if we could get a few of these pivotal calls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Yeah.
All right, so look, that's the game. I think we touched on most of the key talking points. In terms of
some other players, maybe, right? So because even within our group, our ABOG group, there was some some chatter around who else could have been considered, and I think there's one person particularly, one player particularly who was polarising, and that was Errol Goulden. So Errol had 28 disposals at 68% efficiency, but his first quarter was woeful. I think he had 12 of those disposals at 45% efficiency or something like that. 8 turnovers for the game, which is extraordinarily high. I mean, he tried, like he always does, and gave absolute effort.
Yeah, 100%. You could often see he was gut running back and forth. So you can't.
Totally.
He definitely had that when other players didn't seem to be doing it. But back to your point.
and then he just went missing. I think Sam called it out. Last 40 minutes of the game had 1 touch right when the game was on the line. So there was sort of it was a mixed bag, particularly from Errol. And we missed him, in that crunch time 40 minutes, when the game was on the line. We missed his quarterback style influence that he has. So, still a good pat on the back, but not quite there in terms of
not sort of the kind of game that we have such high expectations now because he just sort of set the world on fire last year. But it's what happens. I mean, Chad broke out and then sort of had a chilled-ish year last year when Errol was breaking out, and now Errol's been having a pretty good year this year. But over the last couple of weeks, certainly in this game,
just some of the decisions, I think I'm sure that he'll watch some vision, I'm sure, and improve. So
a couple of other honourable mentions. Tommy McCartan, I think, did play a very good game and was a couple of his intercept marks at pivotal times really kept us in the game. I think Rampy had some pretty solid pressure acts, but how did you see T-Mac's game or even just the back six?
Yeah, so the back six, I think, as a whole, were pretty good. Tommy was definitely the best of them. He took 9 marks, 1 of them contested, 6 contested possessions, and his efficiency was really good, operating at 90%. So he was really, really solid back there. Shout out to Braden Campbell as well. He was also really, really good. And of course, Lizard. Melican, not the greatest game for him. A few clangers in there. So that was, he found it a bit tough. I think Tom McCartan really stood out because I think a lot of our big guys struggled. And I'm, putting the blowtorch, I guess, a little bit on the hangover. He's not the party anymore. Joel Amati, he's the Joel Amati hangover. And Hayden McLean was relatively quiet as well. So they really got us in the air. Just, to see Tommy sort of stand up and take some really solid marks was important.
Definitely. I think we're really missing Cunners there in terms of lockdown small. Higgins got off the leash a bit there, and he's such an important player. And talk about polarising. I mean, if you don't get 20 plus disposals, people are saying, why are you in the team? But I think it goes to show that Cunningham plays such an important role.
He does.
And he's way better at that than like Jakey Lloyd. He can be victim of a fend off, a fairly easy fend off. I'm not saying that he's the only one, but they obviously play different roles. But yeah, it just goes to show that Cunningham's a very important piece.
Unsung hero. Shout out to Harry Cunningham. May he be back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think he's tracking for at least one more. But I also want to just shout out James Jordan. I thought he was pretty good. He's the quintessential role player since he's come in, doing a number of lockdown roles. But he seemed to be a bit more offensive this game, fending off himself, getting some inside 50s. I just thought he had a pretty good game there. Did you see the same, or do you think he could have done a bit more on some of their better ball users?
Yeah, look, I think he was solid. I don't think he lowered his colours too much in this game. I think there's plenty of other people, that we could, kind of shine light on in terms of effort and that sort of thing. No, he was always giving it his all. As you mentioned, like really, really strong two-way runner, seems to put in, a ton of effort. So can't fault him there. What did you make of the Taylor Adams sub?
Yeah, it was a funny. I didn't expect it. I think you were the one who texted the group, because we were sort of doing some segments at the pub, and then we saw a text come through, and I was quite surprised, to be honest. I guess I just thought that Robbo would come off the bench, but he was a little bit. He seemed like he was a little bit lost this game, and maybe that was lack of role or just ongoing development. But yeah, I think when Taylor came on, provided a little bit more run, but I don't know if he's the player for a tactical sub. I don't know.
It seemed odd to me that he was. And I actually know, I don't know if it translated to the numbers, but he's got such a good connection with Grundy.
Grundy,
like, obviously their history together, but you can just see it in the middle. I really like those two in tandem. And I feel like perhaps he could have come on earlier. In my mind. There's a lot of talk at the moment, around Taylor Adams' spot and whether or not with, our two likely back-ins, Mills and Parker, whether or not he holds it. The fact that they made him sub kind of suggests that perhaps he is a little on the outer, but yeah.
Or did you think it was like just give him a bit of a rest? An in-game,
could have been that
in-round rest.
Yeah, he's an older player and a history of soft tissue injuries. You just never know. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure he wasn't thrilled about it.
He did seem to have a bit of a brave face on the bench and doing the team thing and cheering everyone on. So well played. But yeah, no, that was definitely one that sort of confused me. I thought Foxy stepped back in seamlessly. He can do pretty much anything on any line. So yeah, look, I think he pretty much locks it in there. But, it's deflating, isn't it? To win, there's two ways to look at it, right? It's to lose in those circumstances is very, it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But, to only have 3 losses for the season and with a combined total of, what is it?
8 points.
8 points.
Yeah.
It's kind of... we can't really complain that much, really.
No. God, it's like so much better than being completely smashed off the park. That's for sure. And look, these are things that we think we can improve. Do you know what I mean? Because I actually just think it's just basics. I'm telling myself that anyway. That these are all things that that we can with just it's hard to stay up for so long, right? And to approach every game like your life depends on it and put, pressure. And the way our game style is just so focused on so much pressure and, running both ways and doing all that. I think it's hard to do for every game of the season. And so if this is our little drop off, regather, then losing, to these teams by a couple of points won't be the worst thing in the world. We'll know this week whether or not we've got something to worry about. I loved it when in the post-match press conference, Longmire was asked about, the alarm bells. He said, no, not really. No, there's no, just in case you haven't realised, we're still 2 games clear on top of the ladder. So no, not yet.
What did he say? We've had a reasonable start to the season.
I'd say so. We're doing okay. However, if we lose to North Melbourne this weekend, the alarm bells, I will be ringing the alarm bells.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the barometer. So that's obviously the
The
implications. We've touched on it. We're still a couple of games ahead. Our percentage is still very juicy. But North, who are up and about, over their last, last 5 or since round 13, 2 wins, 3 losses, and the 3 losses have been to Collingwood by 1, to Melbourne by 3, and the Bulldogs by 17.
Yeah.
Right. So they've beaten West Coast by 10.
They're a slightly different team than what they were at the beginning of the year.
I think so.
Yeah.
And, look, who really knows with them? I mean, like, if they're gathering momentum, North have always been a bit of a bogey team for us anyway, especially the SCG. But,
that's weird, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know.
Usually we can pinpoint, that they've got someone on the inner sanctum or something like that.
Yeah. Maybe it's Clarkson's dominance with Hawthorn and beating us in that three-peat era. But I mean, we obviously we're tracking well. North are playing pretty well at the moment, you could say. I mean, they also have like a star-studded team really of very high draft picks.
Their
so
midfield is like stacked. Seriously stacked.
They've got about 10 A-grade midfielders. They probably just need to start get some key position players. But look, I think we're talking about North. So you spoke about some tools. We know that Mills has been listed. Obviously, Mills isn't a tall. Sorry, that was the wrong segue. Mills has been announced as playing. So it's his first game back since the shoulder injury. And he's obviously been training since, I think, the last 6 weeks. He's been doing match simulation and stuff with the team. But he won't have had a VFL game prior to jumping back in. I'm okay with that, I think.
I'm okay with that too. And with no disrespect to North Melbourne, and hopefully this comment doesn't come back to bite me, but I think that this is a good game. If he was going to come straight back in to AFL level, this is a good game to do it. It's at home. And the timing for us, here we were a few weeks ago going, how are we going to fit Mills back into the team? Well, I think all of us now can make a pretty good case as to why Mills should be back in the team. So I think the timing is really good, both in terms of him coming back, but also for us to have him back.
So do you think Mills comes in for Roberts?
I would say that'd be the most obvious, yeah.
And then now that we know that Heaney is out for a week.
Oh, God.
So surely Parker will come back in, or unless they elevate Adams.
That'll be an interesting one. We'll get a better sense as to how Taylor Adams is being viewed at the moment. I think there's a pretty strong case for Parker to come back too.
I just think it's surely he'd be just raring to go.
You wouldn't be in the first. We wouldn't want to be in the first contest with him. I'll tell you what, he's. He'll have plenty of built-up emotion from the last few weeks.
I think so.
Sitting in the gym, just getting strong and ready to belt a few people in the middle. Yeah,
definitely. And look, we certainly needed that extra boost against the Saints and probably against Freo as well. But the other players I want to call out, obviously, we had a close win against the Sandy Zebras, the Sandringham Zebras. Yeah, I'm getting that right. And Hamling continues to kick goals. He kicked 2-2. Francis had 25 touches, 12 marks. I'm not saying that that's enough for him to come in for someone like Melly. I don't think Melly's few little errors are enough to drop him. I think he's been having a pretty good season. But these were our 2 best in the VFL game. Reid came back and played his second game in a row. I think he kicked a goal. There are a few other contributors there in the AFL listed sense. Corey Warner, they said Magor and Vickery had a pretty good game as well. But I don't know. I think Mills and Parker headline that. And then if you did want to rest Amati or McLean, then Hamlin coming in up front is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps a little shake up like that could be considered. I mean, it's tough because you want to kind of show faith, and dropping either of those two blokes down to the VFL was a bit of a kick in the teeth, I suppose. And it's not like they've been bad recently. You know, they've both come off some of their best games in the last few weeks. So it's good to see that we've got the depth there. They're all good signs, and the fact that Reed's back as well is just awesome.
Yeah, you never know, man. Talk about a run home. I was going to mention this when we spoke about the implications of the loss. So much has been said about teams starting as well as we have, especially over the past 3 seasons. So if you look at Melbourne's premiership year, they were 9-0, had their first loss in round 10, and then had, I think, 3 more losses and a draw before going 3-0 in finals. And then, of course, it was the bloody Cats in 2022 who had 4 losses until round 9 and then just went on an absolute tear.
Streak.
And 13 wins, 0 losses. And then that tragic afternoon in Melbourne. And then Collingwood last year, they were 11-2 up until the bye, and then 7-3 after the bye. So, look, I think, as you've already said tonight, if you're going to have a drop, it's probably now when you do it.
July's a good time to do it. Yeah.
Funnily enough, I think I spoke with Chris on the potty saying that these games were the ones that I thought were the 50, like they were games that I thought could be won, although nothing is ever guaranteed. No. And so that specifically included Fremantle, St Kilda, North Melbourne, and Adelaide, jumping ahead to the last game of the year. And then I had, I think I had Brisbane and Port as likely losses. And then I think it was Bulldogs, Collingwood, and maybe just those 2 as 50-50 games. I don't know. Yeah. So, look, who knows? Maybe now that we've got these losses out of the way, we go on to play. Look, the point is we just got to play well. We've got to play with effort. We've got to go back to what was working for us. Teams have obviously figured this out to an extent.
Yeah, and we're getting their best, as you brought up as well. Yeah. Like they're really showing up. They want us as a scalp. It's a big thing for them. So we're absolutely got to front up week after week. Shout out though to our little brothers for beating the Blues.
That helped.
Just by the way, that helped keep the buffer alive. But the gap is closing. So this week, not to be taken, for granted in terms of tough match still to be played, and we don't bank anything until it's won.
Yeah, I get very nervous when I see Swans fans out there on the socials saying, "Oh, it's a shoe-in, we've got this," because I think they've been saying that for the past couple of weeks, and they're starting to say it against North as well, and it just makes me very nervous. Nothing is guaranteed in the AFL.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They've got to bring our best. Yep.
Goodness. Well, it's on this weekend, so we'll be there in spirit and shouting out from the O'Reilly. And is there anything else that we should mention before we wrap up tonight?
Just to try and end on a good note, we obviously we did refer to it, but just Logan re-signing. Yeah, it was just such a great moment, and he said beautiful words regarding his team, the club, how it's made him feel like family, and it was never going to be any amount of money that was going to lure him to go. Just hearing those words from a 22-year-old with so much potential, that just loves the club and loves his teammates, I just thought it was really nice. So just to kind of end, I suppose, on that good note.
Absolutely, well said. It fully put a smile on my dial. Like it was unexpected. Like for me, I think for many fans, it was quite unexpected at this timing. I think I thought maybe he might wait until the end of the season, but the way that when they announced it and obviously the 4 years, like it legitimately made my heart sing. Like I was so stoked because he's such an important piece to our young core. And to see him commit like that was just just felt really good.
It's a heartwarming moment for sure.
It was definitely was blood packed. That's a hashtag. That's got to be a new social thing. But all right, Jules, well said. Well, that's pretty much us for the episode. Brings us to the end of it. And thank you for everyone for listening through to the end. If you did make it this far, it must mean we did something good. So if you'd like to get on and follow us on all your socials, that would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, make sure to keep an eye out for more content during the week, as well as on game day itself. Jules, again, thank you so much for hopping on. It's always a pleasure. You are my favourite Swans fan.
Oh, that's just too much. Well, there's so much love in the room. It's unbelievable.
That's right. I blame Logan.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, honestly. Thank you so much. All right, well, we look forward to everyone joining us next time. But until then, up the Bloods and
can you Swannies?
Come on, guys, let's do it.